Before Will Smith, Gregory Hines, and Michael Jackson, there was Sammy Davis Jr.
If it wasn't for Sam, we wouldn't have a lot of the entertainers that we have today, because he was the first. He opened the door.
Davis spent a lifetime bucking the odds, fighting, loving, and performing with consummate passion.
The only way I knew how to get even was not go on a tower with an automatic rifle, but you get even with your talent.
My father set standards in everything he did. I mean, it was amazing. He's still amazing.
In the next 2 hours, we will explore the controversial life of Sammy Davis Jr. We'll chart the ring-a-ding rise of a man who was born into poverty and won the respect of kings and presidents. We will learn about Sammy's love-hate relationship with his powerful mentor, Frank Sinatra.
All right, folks, put on your seats and we'll start the meeting.
Sammy was always afraid that Frank Sinatra was going to do to him what he later really did to Peter Lawford, cut him off and never come back.
We will hear about Davis's compulsive romancing.
There were lots of them all the time, everywhere. Just lots of them.
And the love so dangerous, it had to be kept secret.
Harry Cohn wanted him beaten up, break his knees, and maybe put out his other eye.
We will see how Davis suffered for marrying a white woman.
We had at home and on the road, we had bodyguards all the time.
We will observe how Davis was trapped between two worlds.
It could be devastating. You could feel like a person, like a man with no country, no race.
We will watch as Davis ran from his pain until he just couldn't run anymore.
If they took his voice box out, he wouldn't be able to sing. And Sammy said, if I can't sing, I don't want to live.
This is the story of how one man's demand for the best took him to the top and the price he paid to get there. This is the story of Sammy Davis Jr., the true Hollywood story.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I always wondered who would be considered the foundation for black people in Hollywood. And to be honest with you, I didn't think it was gonna be him. But let's find out more.
From life's ambition, west of the sky.
On May 18th, 1990, the neon lights of the Las Vegas Strip were darkened for 10 minutes. It was a tribute to Sammy Davis Jr., who passed away 2 days earlier.
His funeral was absolutely spectacular. He would have loved it. You would have assumed that the chief of state had died.
I believe he wore an 8.5, but I mean, to fill that shoe, he would have to be good. Real good.
When he was on a stage, he wasn't black, he wasn't white, he was Sammy Davis, and nobody could touch him.
In the 1920s, vaudeville was in full swing. African-American entertainers performed on what was called the Chitlin Circuit, a byproduct of segregation. Reviews like Will Maston's Holiday in Dixieland appealed to blacks and whites alike and drew enormous audiences from coast to coast. On December 8, 1925, in the Harlem section of New York, Elvira Baby Sanchez gave birth to a son. Elvira was a Maston chorus girl. Entertainer Lorna Luft.
She was a hoot when she was alive, you know. She had a lot of life in her. And she was tough.
Tough is an understatement. Baby Sanchez reportedly danced until 2 weeks before her son was born. The infant's father was Maston's lead dancer, Sam Davis. Sammy Davis Jr.'s friend, Amy Green Andrews.
Daddy Sam was no bargain. I mean, you know, he was also a ladies' man and loved to play the ponies.
The couple named the newborn Sam Jr. and quickly went back to work. Sammy Davis Jr.'s second wife, My Britt.
He never had a real home, actually, with his mother and father. They were constantly traveling.
When little Sammy was 2, Sam Sr. and Elvira divorced, and Big Sam took his son on the road. Writer and friend James Cutzillibus Davis.
The essential thing about Sammy Davis's childhood is that he had no childhood. His life was the road, touring, and his reality was what happened on stage.
Sammy possessed an astonishing ability to mimic the singers and dancers he saw on stage. When he was 3, Sammy took part in a dance contest at Philadelphia's Strand Theater.
I won an amateur contest, and the top prize was $5. And when they give you the money as an amateur and you win it, then you become a professional, right? Because you got paid. Of course, yeah. So from the age of 3, I was a professional.
His father used the $5 prize to buy the boy his first pair of tap shoes. Sammy's 3rd wife, Altavice Gore Davis.
He had a gift that was innate in him. He never had a singing lesson. He never had a piano lesson. He never had a tap dance lesson.
It sounds like what they're saying is Sammy Davis Jr. was like a genius. It's like almost as if he thought of it and he wanted to do it, he did it, and there was no lessons to be taught.
There's a spirit that is there within the soul.
During the Depression, the Davises did what they could to survive. Sammy's son, Mark Davis.
When they were working, the money for the gig itself didn't support, so my granddad would go out and later in the night and shoot pool for money. They loved doing what they were doing, and I believe that's what kept them going, but it was very hard.
The reason that he didn't grow taller was because he had rickets. And the reason he had rickets is because he would eat Hershey bars and Coca-Colas all day long.
Producer and friend George Schlaughter.
The way he grew up, he had nothing. He never went to school. He didn't know how to write until he got into the Army.
On the road, little Sammy spent hours watching and imitating comedians, musicians, dancers, and impressionists. In 1933, the multi-talented 8-year-old made his film debut in Rufus Jones for President, a short co-starring Ethel Waters.
I wonder if I could find that video and will YouTube allow me to post it.
Henry, where's Rufus?
Ironically, as talking pictures increased in popularity, vaudeville was dying. Will Maston decided to reform his act as a trio with Big Sam and Little Sammy. Davis biographer Bert Boyer.
But he was this big, and he was just all legs and flying. And so he was simply a crowd pleaser. Without him, they were just a couple of other dancers. But with Sammy, they were an amazing act.
Will Maston's gang, featuring Little Sammy, was popular. But no amount of popularity could overcome the specter of racism in Depression-era America. Maston and Sam Sr. did their best to shield Sammy.
They say, look, they don't like us because we're in show business. They never said, look, it's race, and they never explained it to him.
By 1941, 15-year-old Sammy had traveled across the continent 23 times. That year, the trio was booked into Detroit's Michigan Theater to open for one of the country's hottest new acts.
Sammy was on the bill with Frank Sinatra and Tommy Dorsey when Frank Sinatra was just a boy singer.
From the time he was a kid, Sammy worshipped Sinatra. And I think that always played a part in their relationship. I think Sinatra respected Sammy's talent, but for Sammy, where Sinatra was concerned, it was worship.
The day before Sammy's 16th birthday, Japanese bombers attacked Pearl Harbor. The United States was suddenly thrust into World War II. In 1943, 18-year-old Sammy enlisted in the Army. Whatever dreams of military glory Sammy held were instantly squashed when he began basic training in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
See now, when it comes to just enlisting and not being forced to join, you have nothing but respect for a man like that. Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments.
He had the bad luck to be put into the 1st Integrated Infantry Regiment full of Southerners.
During Sammy's 2 years in the Army, he endured endless cruelty from racist soldiers. including being trapped in a latrine, having obscenities written on his body, having his skin painted white, being tricked into drinking urine disguised as beer, and having his nose broken twice.
To be picked on and not to be able to fight back. I didn't know how to fight back because I had never been called these names before.
There was only one safe place for the skinny 5'3" private: on stage. In camp shows, Sammy sang, danced, and impersonated stars like Humphrey Bogart and James Cagney.
And I think by that he earned everybody's respect because he was so fantastic on the stage.
He finds an equation that stardom equals acceptance. The bigger I get, the better they'll like me. And it was always like, I've got to become a star like another man has to breathe.
Upon his discharge in 1945, 19-year-old Sammy joined his father and Will Mastin in Los Angeles. Frank Sinatra was also in Hollywood, starring on the radio show Your Hit Parade. One day, Sammy stood outside the NBC studios, hoping for a glimpse of his idol.
And Frank saw him amidst all these people, and he said, "Hey, don't I know you?" Yeah, you worked with your father and your uncle, didn't you? He said, "Would you like to come in and watch rehearsal?" Well, of course, this was like the biggest thing that could happen to Sammy, to come and watch Frank Sinatra's rehearsal.
Later that year, the Will Mastin Trio caught a break. The act was hired to open at one of the first big hotels in Las Vegas, El Rancho Vegas, for $500 a week. Sammy was thrilled to be playing Vegas for the first time, but his joy quickly turned to anger.
I can imagine $500 a week back in those days. Had to feel like you was a millionaire.
You could not walk through the front. This is in Las Vegas, Nevada. And you could not eat in the restaurant. Forget gambling. There was no, you couldn't get up to a table. They wouldn't allow you in the casino.
By night, Sammy, Big Sam, and Will Mastin packed in white crowds at the El Rancho. By day, the trio stayed in the town's segregated black neighborhood. The racism only seemed to motivate Sammy.
Sammy did not just perform. He did not just entertain. Sammy really wanted to pulverize an audience. He wanted to leave them limp. He wanted to be the funniest, the fastest, the most talented. Sing louder, sing higher, sing more.
In November 1949, Frank Sinatra hired the Will Mastin Trio to perform at the Capitol Theater in New York.
He said, you know what I want? There's a kid that works with his father and his uncle. And he said, get them. And they said, Frank, we get the Nicholas brothers, the Berry brothers. He said, no, his name is Sam. I want him. And so he found him. He said, okay, what do you want to pay him? He said, give him $1,500. He said, $1,500? He said, you can get the Nicholas brothers for that. He said, give him $1,500.
During the run, Sammy sat backstage and studied every one of Frank's performances. Offstage, Sinatra made a point of hanging out with Sammy and giving him advice. Frank's widow, Barbara Sinatra.
I think that he really didn't know Sammy was black or white or green or whatever.
And I was just about to say that. I'm starting to think that Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra's friendship was golden. Frank Sinatra did not see color. He saw business. That's it.
And nor did Sammy know that Frank was white. They were like brothers.
I wanted to be like him. I wanted to dress like him. I wanted to look like him, you know.
The prestige of sharing the bill with Sinatra helped the trio land another major gig. In March 1950, they were set to open for Janice Page at the Sunset Strip nightclub, Ciro's. George Schlatter was a show producer for Ciro's.
Janice Page had been appearing in Pajama Game in New York, and she was the biggest thing on stage in New York.
The run was launched with a midnight show following the Academy Awards. That night, the audience was packed with A-list stars.
Sammy hit that stage like a battalion of Green Berets. You've never seen anything like it in your life. He opened with a 30-foot knee slide, and he did tap dancing like nobody had ever seen. They talk about Bojangles. Forget about it. I mean, Sammy actually tore up the floor, and then he sang straight, and then he played instruments. He played everything but his coat. And the audience sat there in just shock, disbelief. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. And Janice Page, poor child, was waiting in the hallway outside, waiting to go on. And
can you imagine someone being multi-talented like that without zero training? Zero. Let me know in the comments if you know anybody like that.
Never got on. Sammy was supposed to do 15 minutes, and he did about an hour 10. She opened the show after that, and everybody then realized you just did not try to follow Sammy Davis Jr.
Coming up.
He was panicking. What's a one-eyed singer-dancer going to do on a stage?
And later,
Sammy tried to be Frank. He tried to drink more, smoke more, stay up later, more women, more booze, more laughs.
In March 1950, 24-year-old Sammy Davis Jr. stepped on stage at Ciro's in Hollywood and changed the course of his career. Davis was no longer the junior member of the Will Maston Trio. He was a headliner. Soon after the performance at Ciro's, the Will Maston Trio starring Sammy Davis Jr. was signed by the powerful William Morris Agency. The talent agency booked the trio into major clubs around the country and upped their asking price to $1,250 a week. The trio also broke into television, debuting on The Ed Sullivan Show in 1951.
The first Sullivan Show I did, Ed Sullivan said, here he is. You're really, really exciting. Let's bring them out here. The kid, watch this kid in the middle. You know. He said, he's really good. The Will Marston Trio, and keep your eye on the little guy. I'm waiting for him to say Sammy Davis Jr., right? He never said it.
Another big break came in the fall of 1952 when the trio was invited to appear on NBC's Colgate Comedy Hour, hosted by comedian Eddie Cantor. Biographer Bert Boyer.
And Eddie Cantor was as big as you can be in his day. He was Mr. Television then.
Like Ed Sullivan, Cantor was a rarity, a white star who was willing to share his stage with black performers. Director Arthur Penn worked as floor manager for the Colgate Comedy Hour.
It was not customary yet that black people were on television with any degree of frequency.
Cantor actually took a professional risk by inviting black performers on the air.
Sammy finished performing, and Eddie Cantor mopped Sammy's face, and the hate mail came in something awful. How dare you wipe that face with your good, clean, white handkerchief, and I'm not going to watch your show anymore. And the sponsors began buckling under this pressure, and they said, hey, that's bad. We don't want that, and we don't want any trouble, and, you know. And Cantor said, you don't want any trouble, then you don't have me. This man is going to be on my show.
Backstage, Cantor gave Davis a mezuzah to wear around his neck. The comedian explained that the Jewish amulet represents the Word of God. Davis never took the mezuzah off. The following spring, the trio headlined at the Copacabana in New York, although the black members of the audience had to sit in the balcony. At $5,000 per week, the Will Maston Trio starring Sammy Davis Jr. became the highest-paid black act since Bill Bojangles Robinson.
$5,000 a week. Oh my God. Can you imagine making $5,000 a week today? Boy, the crazy thing about it is it's money back then, and it's still money today. Nothing's changed.
The trio was invited to play the Frontier Hotel in Las Vegas in November 1954. Sammy felt he had enough clout to make a radical demand.
Sammy agreed to go into the Frontier if he could stay in the hotel, if black people were allowed to see him in the hotel.
Amazingly, the hotel's management agreed, and they even met the trio's asking price of $7,500 per week. The deal also included comped suites, drinks, and food.
Nobody played Vegas at that point for more than a week or 10 days. And I booked Sammy into the Frontier for about 4 weeks. And that was a dangerous thing to do because there was a very, very heavy color line in Vegas.
Sammy had the run of the hotel. That was just the beginning of really making it.
Life was indeed sweet. Decca Records had just signed Davis to his first long-term recording contract. After midnight on November 19th, Davis wrapped up a performance at the Frontier. 28-year-old Sammy climbed into his new Cadillac convertible to drive to Los Angeles, where he had a recording commitment. As dawn came up over the double-lane highway, a car passed Davis, wove over both lanes, and then suddenly and inexplicably stopped. Davis was forced to veer and crashed into an oncoming vehicle.
He woke up in the hospital and found that he didn't have an eye. In those days, the steering wheel of the Cadillac had a cone. It's amazing that they designed it that way, but it had a cone that came up and in the center, and he hit his eye on that.
The attending physician told Sammy that his only option was a prosthetic eye made of plastic.
He was panicking. What's a one-eyed singer, dancer going to do on a stage? He'd lost all sense of balance, all sense of depth in terms of looking at things. You couldn't, with one eye, you don't have the same depth perception that you have with two. And he was terribly frightened.
A car accident? I did not know that. I always thought maybe he was either born with bad vision, had opacification, or keratoconus. I did not know it was a car accident.
Davis was in deep despair when the hospital rabbi paid a visit. In their discussion of Judaism, Sammy found a glimmer of hope. Son, Mark Davis.
His struggle was similar, so I think he can relate to what the Jews went through.
He wondered, what did they know that made them survive all this hatred, all this anger toward them, which he had felt.
Inspired, Davis began a serious study of Judaism.
He'd had no education, he couldn't spell, but he read everything.
A few weeks after leaving the hospital, Sammy decided to return to performing.
Sammy had the instinct, I should go back where it really happened for me, which is Ciro's in Hollywood.
But with his sense of balance gone, Sammy had to learn how to move all over again.
He never rehearsed. For this, he took a rehearsal hall by himself, just didn't tell anybody. He just rented a room, rehearsal room, got a record player and tried to dance. And boy, he had trouble. It was hard.
Wait a minute. So make sure I'm hearing this correctly. If you lose an eye, it throws your balance off? I didn't know that. I learn something new every day.
But he just forced himself to go on and on doing it until finally he was able to do it again.
On January 11th, 1955, 29-year-old Davis made his comeback at Ciro's. Friend Amy Green Andrews was present that night.
Bogart, Bacall, Rock Hudson, I mean, everybody was there.
You couldn't get near the club. I mean, there was Clark Gable and Cary Grant and Gary Cooper and Marilyn Monroe. These people were just waiting to get in.
People went to see what this man could do with one eye.
He had an eye patch on, and he didn't know whether he could dance again. He didn't know what would happen. And he was genuinely nervous that night.
Davis turned misfortune into comedy.
He was walking around the stage doing Jerry Lewis, and he bumped into the microphone, and he hit it with his eye, hit right here, and the audience just went silent. And Sammy said, "Oh, sorry, Frank, didn't see you come in," referring to Skinny Frank, and it broke up the house.
On stage, Sammy's fears melted away.
He was leaping around the stage, he was singing, he was dancing, he never stopped. The show must have been 3 hours long. He pulled every trick out of every hat that he had ever learned all of his life. When he finished, everybody stood up. Tears were streaming down our eyes. That was the moment when he became a star.
But stardom didn't necessarily guarantee star treatment, as Davis discovered when he decided to make Los Angeles his permanent home.
He wanted to buy a house in an upscale neighborhood, and real estate agents at that point were not about to sell a house to any black man.
To get around the discrimination, Davis made his purchase by proxy.
There was a house up in Hollywood Hills that had been owned by Judy Garland, and so Sammy and I went up to see the house. And we bought the house in my name. And then once the house was bought in my name, we transferred it to Sammy.
But Davis couldn't win. The African-American press accused the entertainer of wanting to live white. Friend Shirley Rhodes.
The black press just weren't fair to him. I thought it was very unfair what they said about him and what they did. If you make enough money to live wherever, That's where you want to live.
My lifestyle was a lifestyle that was enviable, but also with a lot of people, they just couldn't see, geez, well, what is he doing? And particularly, again, with my own.
Privately, the criticism ate at Sammy's soul. Davis finally sought out counseling from a rabbi. Sammy confided he wanted to become a Jew.
And the rabbi said to him, look, it's not having a piece of paper. It's a matter of believing in the things that you're reading about. And I recognize that you've read a great deal. Read more and follow the life that you feel is the life towards God as you see God wants you to be. Eventually, Sammy showed his sincerity in it, and he was formally converted to Judaism. And he was a devout Jew all of his life.
The crazy part is they have no problem giving their money to him to go and see him entertain, laugh, and enjoy life. But the moment he wants to live near them or live better than them, that's when they have a problem. And the crazy part about it is, if he hadn't attempted to move in that neighborhood, who's to say that he still wasn't living better than them?
Coming up,
I'd like to thank the NAACP for this wonderful trophy.
They would do all the jokes to me, and I loved being the butt of the jokes.
And later,
he was in a hospital bed, and at that point he must have weighed 80 pounds.
Sammy Davis Jr.'s talent was so overwhelming that it seemed to transcend race. But as 30-year-old Davis would soon find out, performing for white people and dating one were two different things. In 1956, renowned composer Julie Stein approached Sammy with an idea for a Broadway show. Friend Amy Green Andrews.
Julie Stein was trying for years to get Sammy on Broadway. This was a thing with Julie Stein. And he finally did it. And the only way he could raise money was if Sammy did his nightclub act in the second half of the show.
Stein developed a musical called Mr. Wonderful about a young entertainer's struggle to succeed. Davis insisted on an interracial cast. Sammy also committed to a year-long contract, which meant foregoing the $10,000 to $25,000 a week he commanded for nightclub engagements. Davis biographer Bert Boyer was a Broadway columnist at the time.
It was a tremendous financial sacrifice, but Sammy did it because he felt that he had to have he needed more dimension in his career. He couldn't just keep playing nightclubs.
Mr. Wonderful opened on March 22nd, 1956. The critics didn't think the show was so wonderful.
It had terrible reviews, the worst possible reviews. But they all categorically said that the great part of the show, however, is the last 25 or 30 minutes when Sammy Davis Jr. does his nightclub act.
I wonder will YouTube allow me to post it on my channel, Mr. Wonderful. Tell me in the comments if you've seen it before, or would you like for me to try to find it?
Which is how they climaxed the show.
Despite the reviews, Mr. Wonderful was a bona fide hit. But Broadway star or not, Sammy was still black. Boyer remembers the time Davis wanted to go to the swank nightclub El Morocco.
I spoke to the maitre d', and I said, I'm bringing Sammy Davis Jr. And there was kind of a silence. And he said, well, and he started mumbling, bub, 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 bub. And he said, well, he's very dark, isn't he? I said, what? He said, well, wait a minute, just a second. He said, well, look, if you come, he won't be welcome. He won't be very well treated.
It wasn't just me going through it. The sad thing about it is that that was our society at that point in time, you know. And so everybody, with the darker skin, went through it.
For Sammy, the only truly safe place was on stage. Friend James Cutzillibus Davis.
The fact is, off stage, he was rather awkward and a little bit afraid. On stage, he knew he had power. He knew that when he was up there, he was ruling the world.
At that point in time, for me, it was the formulating period. That's when I said, I'll use my talent and I'll hone it and I'll try to use it. So, boy, I'll get even, And the only way I knew how to get even was not go on a tower with an automatic rifle, but you get even with your talent.
Maybe Davis couldn't go to El Morocco, but he could still spend money.
He had Cy Martin, who was a Broadway tailor at that time, make up some suits for him. He ordered 10 suits. And as soon as he had them, he took out everything else he owned, put it in the center of the living room, and said, give it away. Let people have it who want it. I'm not wearing that anymore.
Actress and friend Diane Carroll.
I find that's part of his blackness. The lie about our being lesser people, and lesser this and lesser that. And that contributes to the millions that we spend on cosmetics and clothing and beautiful cars and whatever. And Sammy was a victim of that.
Mr. Wonderful closed on February 23, 1957, and Davis returned to Los Angeles. There, at a party at Tony Curtis's house, Sammy was introduced to actress Kim Novak.
And they must have had an instant chemistry, because that was Sammy's great love. Kim Novak was really his real deep love.
In some parts of the South, black men were being lynched for merely looking at white women. Even in Hollywood, a relationship between a white woman and a black man, regardless of their star power, was still taboo.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but why is it anyone's business what somebody else do with their time? Whether they are black, white, Asian, it should make a difference. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments.
So they saw each other secretly, and then word of them seeing each other began appearing in columns.
24-year-old Novak was being groomed by Columbia studio chief Harry Cohn to be a major star. The actress had just made a splash in Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, and Cohn wasn't about to risk his property.
He had invested millions in Kim Novak, and he didn't want her dating a black man.
Harry Cohn was pretty well connected with the mob. He wanted him beaten up, break his knees, and maybe put out his other eye.
Davis was terrified. Through Cohn's wise guys, Sammy was advised to marry a black woman quickly. Cy Marsh was Davis's agent at the time.
Sammy realized how serious this was, so he went down the strip in Las Vegas, and there was a performer called Lorraine White, and she was a charming, delightful girl. And Sammy said, listen, how would you like to marry me? And she said, are you kidding? Naturally. And so he went ahead and he made arrangements with her marriage, and he paid her some money.
At least she was in on the con. I thought it was going to be some kind of thing where he married some woman and she did not know what was going on. I applaud him for that, for at least informing her.
Davis married Lorraine White in Las Vegas on January 10, 1958. The couple divorced within a year. In his 1965 autobiography, Davis confessed he began to drink during this period. Drinking wasn't Sammy's only excess. Producer George Schlatter observed Sammy's relationship with Frank Sinatra.
Frank was not good for Sammy in some ways because Sammy tried to be Frank. He tried to drink more, smoke more, stay up later, more women, more booze, more laughs, and Sammy was, you could not compete with Frank.
For Sammy, there was always an element of insecurity in the relationship. Davis's press agent, Jay Bernstein.
Sammy was always afraid that Frank Sinatra was going to do to him what he later really did to Peter Lawford, cut him off and never come back.
In 1959, Sammy's competitive nature got the best of him. Davis declared on a radio show that he was bigger than Sinatra. Retribution was swift and cold.
It offended Frank so much that Frank stopped speaking to him and didn't use him in the movie Never So Few that he was going to use him in. And Steve McQueen got that big break of the part that Sammy Davis Jr. was supposed to have.
Davis was shattered. But Sinatra...
10-minute comments. Do you think it was more about putting him back in his place? Or do you think it goes deeper than that?
Sinatra eventually warmed up to Sammy again. In 1960, Frank produced and starred in a heist comedy. The crooner offered Sammy a role as a garbage man.
Frank said, there's going to be a part for you. I'm going to give you $100,000. He could have got him for 5 cents, but he paid him $100,000. He said, and Dean will be in it. We'll get Joey Bishop. Peter will be in it. And we're going to heist Las Vegas. That's the story of Ocean's 11.
Since they were shooting in Vegas, Sinatra suggested the group stay at the Sands and perform every night at the hotel's Copa room. And thus was born the Rat Pack.
Welcome to the Sands Hotel. As Vice President in charge of entertainment, I hereby officially welcome you to this saloon.
They wheeled out a room service cart full of booze, and they went up on stage, and they ad-libbed the show. There was no rehearsal.
All right, folks, put on your seats and we'll start the meeting. Oh, come on.
They were cool. They were gorgeous. They were in shape. They were young. They were romantic. They were talented. They could sing. They could dance. They were funny. And they loved each other.
Audiences went wild.
They were as big as the Beatles. They were, as a group, as big as Elvis Presley.
When was the last time you was cut by a colored fella? Would that make me Jewish?
So the routine was they would go to work on the picture, work all day on the picture, come back to the Sands, take a nap, go into the steam room. By the time they finished with this show, they were so high, they were so excited and had such energy and such momentum going, they still didn't go to bed. So they'd go into the casino and Dean would deal. And Frank would be like the croupier and Sammy would be there and they would deal 21. And they'd say, okay, it's 18, hit it, and they'd give them a 7. 18, 25, we've got a winner. And they would pay off on hands that didn't win.
The Rat Pack inhabited a macho world of booze and broads, cigarettes and jokes, some of them at Sammy's expense.
So come on up here, you little color coat.
If Davis minded, he never let on. Dean Martin's daughter, Dina Martin.
Sammy, more so than all of them, was the one who worked the hardest to try and make it all work because he wanted to be part of it.
Sam! What? I didn't mean to move in the neighborhood.
I think Sammy used racism in the Rat Pack repertoire as much as anyone else did. I think there was no real sense of racism except as a theatrical pivot for those guys.
Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments. Do you think race was used equally by both, or do you think it was more at the expense of one over the other?
They would do all the jokes to me, and I loved being the butt of the jokes, on screen and off, you know, because that was my image, and that's what I tried to maintain, the kid, you know.
I'd like to thank the NAACP for this wonderful trophy.
Now, if you understand why Dad and Frank could treat Sammy, when some would say in not a very nice way, you know, calling him Smokey, or I'd like to thank the NAACP for this award, things like that, is because they were all equal to themselves. They were friends.
I don't know about him. I think he really the African queen, Daddy. He must be.
And it wouldn't occur to them not to be able to joke with each other, you know, and to call Sammy whatever they wanted to. It never, ever entered their mind that he was anything other than their equal.
I think he's one of the greatest entertainers in the whole country, ladies and gentlemen.
By 1960 standards, the Rat Pack was positively radical.
Hey, you look like...
let's not lose our heads about it.
Yeah. I said he was the best in the country, and the city ain't too good.
Entertainer Ben Vereen.
Had he not been there, we wouldn't be able to say there was a brother in the Rat Pack. We'd say the Rat Pack was all, it was white. But no, he was there and representing quite brilliantly.
Let me know something in the comments. Do you think the jokes that we just heard, and I'm pretty sure that there was a lot more, do you think that they would stand up today? What do you think would happen if someone was to come out with an act using those exact same jokes today?
Coming up.
There was a lot of times we had to stay in the house. just to be safe. I mean, there was death threats.
And later,
I was told that I was this close to having cirrhosis.
In 1960, Sammy Davis Jr. broke yet another racial barrier by becoming the only person of color in the infamous Rat Pack.
What? I didn't mean to move in the neighborhood.
But all his pally's considerable muscle couldn't protect Davis from the abuse he was about to face, all in the name of love. Privately, 34-year-old Davis admitted to friends he had a penchant for white women. But his liaisons were generally sexual, nothing to get serious about. Until one day in early 1960, when he walked onto the Fox lot and spied a Swedish actress named My Britt.
I wonder, is it because it's almost like a forbidden fruit? You know, you want what you can't have. Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments.
I was working at the time on a movie called Blue Angel, and he came into the commissary with a friend of his, an actress that worked on the movie I was working in. And I was sitting alone at the table eating lunch, and he said, who is that? And she told him, and he said, can I meet her? And she said, forget it. She's very absorbed with work and nobody gets to her or anything. And I guess that's the impression I gave because I was so enormously shy at the time.
The 24-year-old actress had been making movies in Europe since she was 18. Davis was intrigued. Britt was not. At least, not visibly.
I didn't seem very interested at first, but I think I was. But sometimes you have to cool it.
Mai's apparent indifference only made Sammy want her more. Friend Amy Green Andrews remembers being at a restaurant with Davis.
And all of a sudden, Mai comes out and he starts trembling. I'm saying, what's the matter with you? He was like, what is wrong with you? You got the chills? And he said, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life.
In order to succeed, Sammy Davis Jr. would not take no for an answer. And that's the same way he pursued My Britt.
One time he had a party up at his house, and he always had a screening of movies up there, so he invited me for that. And from that time on, we started to see each other.
Davis fell hard for Britt, and the feeling was mutual. Actress Diane Carroll.
She is one of the most loving people I've ever met in my life, and she loves Sammy deeply. I think it was an experience that he'd never had because of the purity of it. That's what I saw about Mai.
Dean Martin's daughter, Dina Martin.
You would catch him out of his good eye, you know, staring at her. He really adored her.
I believe that Sammy was in love with My Britt. I think that there's some psychological needs, the fact that she was blonde, like Kim Novak, like he wanted to prove that he could have anyone that everybody else would want.
Why do you feel people can't see love? They can only see color. Let me know in the comments.
When Britt went to New York to shoot a movie, Davis phoned her almost every day.
He proposed actually over the telephone because at that time I was in New York City doing a movie called Murder Incorporated. And he called me there and he proposed over the phone, and I said, I think that would be wonderful.
And they had great problems because a tall, blonde, beautiful Swedish lady in the streets of New York could not walk down the street with a little black person. That was the beginning of Sammy's bodyguard. The bodyguard would go in, the limousine would open, we'd all go in, then we'd get out in a restaurant. That's how it went.
The wedding was set for October 16th, 1960. That summer, Peter Lawford's brother-in-law, John F. Kennedy, ran for the Democratic presidential nomination. Kennedy was already tight with the Rat Pack, and his humanistic ideals appealed to Davis.
Sammy campaigned vigorously, going into each and every black community they could go into and getting the vote out, and he really worked very, very hard. Both he and Mai worked very, very, very hard.
But not all Democrats looked favorably on Sammy's impending wedding. Many blacks felt Davis was trying to be white. On the other hand, when Davis appeared at the Democratic National Convention, the white Alabama and Mississippi...
I never understood that. Maybe somebody can explain it for me in the comments. What does it mean when you're trying to be white or trying to be black?
Mississippi delegations booed.
In 1960, it was illegal for blacks and whites to be together in 36 states. And at least 15 states, they were still prosecuting people for doing that.
Davis worried that his marriage might harm Kennedy's chances, especially since Sinatra, a highly visible Kennedy supporter, was to be Sammy's best man. Sammy decided to postpone the wedding, and he told Sinatra before he told Mai.
He lied, and he said, I can't get the hotel room, and the rabbi can't make it, and he made all these excuses. And Frank said, you know, you don't have to do this. And he said, no, I want to.
Sammy was very close to all of the Kennedys, and with the guys, Sinatra and Dean and Peter Lawford. Because it was election time, we figured that it would be best to just postpone it for a while.
On November 8th, Kennedy beat the Republican candidate, Richard Nixon, by a narrow margin. 5 days later, Davis and Britt were married in a Jewish ceremony. After his public and private support of JFK, Davis expected to attend the inauguration, but he was in for another disappointment.
He and Mai were disinvited from the inauguration because it was an interracial couple. It was explained to them in great detail, great apologies were said, but they could not stand side by side together.
Sammy was crushed.
Sammy felt this very, very deep wound that I don't know that he ever really got over. Because here he was working so hard with the black community to get them to vote for John Kennedy.
Sinatra produced the inaugural gala, but Dean Martin, who was a close Kennedy friend for many years, boycotted the festivities.
I think he was so mad with the Kennedys for hurting Sammy so badly that Dad never even went.
In December 1960, Mai announced she was pregnant. The press went to town.
Sammy was so tired of the questions when they said, well, Sammy, what color is the baby going to be? He said, look, I don't care if the baby is polka dot. I'm going to love this child. And so then that went on, the polka dot baby went on and on.
Mai gave birth to a girl, Tracy, on July 5th, 1961. The couple later adopted two baby boys, Mark and Jeff.
We discussed that before we got married.
Honestly, I've never heard of Tracy. Let me know, does she do any movies, TV shows? Where's she at today?
And we both decided that there are a lot of children that needs to be taken care of, aren't always wanted, and it would be wonderful if we could help out. So we tried our best.
Mai willingly gave up her career and devoted herself to the family. But this was no Leave It to Beaver life. Son, Mark Davis.
There was a lot of times we had to stay in the house just to be safe. I mean, there was death threats. And if we went anywhere, somebody had to go with us. We were never alone.
We had, at home and on the road, we had bodyguards all the time. And they just became part of the family, kind of.
Britt learned to handle the hostility, but it wasn't always easy.
Some things, you hear them and you hear bad words towards you, but when you got to learn to, it goes in one ear and it has to go out the other, because if not, it drives you crazy. And once you've learned that, you kind of goes right through, and that. It's not as easy as that, but you have to train yourself a little.
If Mai was an adoring mother, Sammy was an absent father. Davis was on the road 50 weeks out of the year.
You might think it might be great saying, hey, you know, my father was Sammy Davis Jr. But if you didn't know him, so there's a void.
It sounds like what Sammy Davis Jr. did to his son, his father didn't do to him. His father took him into the business, whereas Sammy Davis Jr. didn't do it. But maybe you can help me understand something that was said in this video earlier that I don't understand. Now, I understand that people have a hatred for skin color. I understand that part. But they want to control other people's outcome on their life. But as soon as you try to bring control over them, it's a problem. Please explain it to me in the comments if you can.
Work wasn't the only reason Davis stayed on the road. Sammy's hectic schedule provided some escape from his emotions.
Sammy Davis Jr. was always in pain, but he didn't think about the pain when he was running. And so there was always something happening.
As he approached 39, Davis kept the candle burning at both ends.
Sammy would do 2 shows, a dinner show in Vegas, a midnight show in Vegas, and then he'd do a show for all the other performers in Vegas. And then he'd show a movie. And then maybe he'd sleep for, a couple hours, usually with his clothes on, just, fall asleep on the couch. He just didn't have time to sleep because he just had so much to do. The one person that Sammy Davis Jr. did not enjoy being alone with, and I know that as a fact, was Sammy Davis Jr.
Not that Sammy ever let himself be alone.
Women love Sammy. Women who shouldn't have loved Sammy loved Sammy. The women who Sammy shouldn't have loved, he loved back.
There were lots of them all the time, everywhere. Just lots of them. I think it made him feel really very, very good that he needed that.
Coming up.
One of the first poachers, which was Sammy and Paula Wayne, the blonde white girl, resulted in windows being shot out at the Majestic Theater.
And later,
Sammy always hated the song Mr. Bojangles because it really was talking about one of his greatest fears, of being broke.
By 1964, 38-year-old Sammy Davis Jr. endured rejection and death threats because of his marriage to a white actress, My Britt. The controversy spilled over into his career, but Davis didn't buckle. That fall, Davis returned to the Broadway stage in a musical version of Golden Boy. Arthur Penn directed the musical.
It's a very good story about a young musician who's also a fighter, and he sort of ends up sacrificing his musical career for the quick riches of the fighting game.
In adapting the play for Davis, Golden Boy was given a racial twist that was radical for its time. Golden Boy producer Hilly Elkins.
He fell in love with the trainer's gal, who was a white girl. And so it was a story of interracial love, which was a little bit of a problem in '64.
The musical opened at New York's Majestic Theater on October 20th, 1964.
It generated an extraordinary amount of both positive reaction and some very nasty negative reaction.
Tell me something, why do you think Hollywood was so persistent in trying to push European people with black people as love interests? Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments.
One of the first poachers, which was Sammy and Paula Wayne, the blonde white girl, resulted in windows being shot out at the Majestic Theater.
One moment in the play was so controversial that extra security was needed.
We had one scene we call the suicide scene, where Sammy went upstage and he and Paula kissed. We had a lot of security on that. We had used toilet paper come in the mail. I mean, it was really very unattractive.
Some of the hostility was aimed directly at Davis, who had to be accompanied by bodyguards during the show's run.
We'd been a club in Buffalo, and you'd hear the N-word, and Sammy would at times ignore it, and at times would just go ballistic. Sammy was breaking down doors, and he knew that he was, and he knew that that hurt, and he knew that it would be easier for the next group.
As Sammy performed in Golden Boy, race riots were erupting across the country.
It was the time of the Watts riots in Los Angeles, so we needed no more evidence that the country was sizzling.
If you lived or experienced the Watts riots, can you please paint a picture in the comments about it?
It was not unexpected that any major black city with a major black population would go up.
Davis made himself available for civil rights events, often at considerable personal risk. Second wife, My Brit.
He was doing work with Martin Luther King. He was down in the March on Selma, and he was in Washington, D.C., and was in several other places. I joined him in some, but Sammy was not that crazy about it because he thought that would be a little too blow-up situation.
I wonder something. I wonder, did Sammy Davis Jr. participate in the civil rights movement only for one or two reasons? Either he felt it was the right thing to do, or because of all the hatred he got because he married a European woman. Which one do you think it is? Let me know in the comments.
If we appear together.
Sammy's business partner, Cy Marsh.
And I must also tell you, because I know I paid the money, that he also contributed a lot of money towards all these different events.
He was doing, at different times, a film, a television series, a lot of concerts and benefits up to the zoo. He was just all over the place. But that was his nature. And I must say that although he was exhausted, the show never suffered because of it. He delivered.
I knew that he was also personally wired very, very tight. He was smoking a lot. He was drinking quite a bit. He was expending a huge amount of energy, plus feeling that he was in a vulnerable position, as well as being called upon every free minute to appear somewhere in relation to the civil rights movement. So it was a life stretched very thin.
Although Davis relocated his family to New York during the run of Golden Boy, he spent very little time with them. Son, Mark Davis.
You just knew, your father was Sammy Davis Jr. He worked so hard, It was hard. I mean, it's hard to deal with him being gone.
Even when he was home, Davis was surrounded by a crowd.
They had this lovely townhouse that he'd rented, and he gave these wonderful parties on Sunday night that everybody in town who was famous in show business would be there. Julie Stein and Judy Garland and Liza Minnelli, and they'd all get up and they'd sing with each other, and Julie would play his new songs and Liza would sing them, and it was just fabulous. And Mai hated every minute of it, and it was Sammy's dream.
As if he weren't busy enough, Sammy co-wrote his autobiography with Bert Boyer and Bert's wife, Jane. In August 1965, Yes, I Can was published and became an instant bestseller. While appearing in Golden Boy, Sammy was also approached by NBC about hosting a variety show. The program was the first headlined by a black performer since Nat King Cole went off the air in 1957. The half-hour Sammy Davis Jr. show premiered on January 7, 1966. Actress and friend Diane Carroll.
Well, his television show was a breakthrough, major breakthrough. It was very important. He wanted the finest orchestrations, the best lighting, the best sets, everything he could possibly have.
Davis was well aware of the history-making potential of his new variety series. Press agent Jay Bernstein.
He said, Jay, I want you to make certain that everybody in America watches this show. I want it to be the most publicized show in the history of television. Well, the good news and the bad news. The good news was I was able to make this the most publicized show in the history of television. The other good news was that everybody in America watched it. The bad news was the show was terrible.
Davis had the clout to get major guests like Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, but he was too much in awe of them.
Because of his fawning over them and treating them like royalty, the show became saccharine and sweet and boring, and everybody that tuned in tuned it out early and never came back again.
The series was canceled after only 4 months. Davis was disappointed, but he was still appearing in Golden Boy, which provided plenty of distraction.
There were all these attractive young women in the company, and certainly outside of the company. I mean, you know, Sammy was a big star. There's just no question about it. And he was personally very needy. He needed affection.
He was always tomcatting around. That was part of his, you know, was tired, nobody was around, he was bored, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. What do? Shh, come here, don't mean anything.
Sammy's attention apparently meant something to at least one member of the Golden Boy cast.
Lola Falana. Tell me something about Golden Boy. Have you seen it have you seen it, period? And tell me your thoughts about it.
Falana was a dancer in the show, and you know, they went on a road and they dated. They went out together.
Lola also loved him in her strange way. She wanted to be Mrs. Sammy Davis Jr. more than anything else in the world.
Unfortunately, there was already a Mrs. Sammy Davis Jr. Mai put up with Sammy's cheating, but the marriage was beginning to show signs of strain.
Monogamy was not a strong suit, and ultimately it became a problem.
In early 1966, Mai returned to California with their 3 children. Sammy remained in New York to fulfill his Golden Boy contract. However, the monotony of a Broadway show was wearing on him.
So I said, look, you're really feeling stir-crazy. I'll make a deal with you. We'll close early, in spite of the fact that we're doing business. My condition is we do it in London. And he said, okay, we'll do it in London. My condition is we do it at the Palladium, which hadn't had a legit show there.
Golden Boy closed on Broadway in March. Davis resumed his frenetic life on the road while the musical was ready for the London stage. Events were brewing that would have a shattering effect, not only on Sammy, but on the entire nation. Coming up.
He was devastated. Devastated, because he knew them.
By 1967, Sammy Davis Jr.'s neglect of his marriage to actress Mai Britt was causing tension. But nothing slowed Sammy down. In early 1968, Davis was in New York rehearsing for the London opening of his musical, Golden Boy. On April 4th, his valet rushed to his dressing room and broke the news that Dr. Martin Luther King had been assassinated.
I know he found it horrible. It was devastating. I mean, Martin Luther King was such a wonderful person, and to hear that he was killed was an enormous loss for us all, no matter what race.
Entertainer Ben Vereen was in the London company of Golden Boy.
Sammy went that night on Johnny Carson and told the nation to stay in the consciousness of King and keep the peace. From that point, we went to Chicago, and I went with this man to every organization that he spoke at, the gangs of Chicago, the Blackstone Rangers. He would go into their meetings and tell them, and I'd hear them call him everything but a child of God. And he stood there and he took it. He said, call me what you want. He said, hate my guts, but keep the peace. Keep King's spirit alive. Do not go into the streets and burn and kill. Please.
Grief-stricken, Davis threw himself into campaigning for Robert Kennedy's presidential bid. In the wake of the King assassination, Davis believed the country needed Kennedy more than ever. Dean Martin's daughter, Dina Martin.
Bobby was much more liberal. I mean, he was ready to help with any kind of marches and things. He was ready to help the blacks at that time.
Davis wanted to campaign for Bobby Kennedy full-time, but work commitments prevented him. In May, Davis went to London to open in Golden Boy. There, Sammy noticed a young dancer he met in New York, Altavice Gore.
We opened at the London Palladium, and me playing the part of his sister, he didn't realize that when I came dressed in a white dress with frills down the back, I remember it looked like Rita Hayworth or Ava Gardner. And he said, who is she? Wow.
Gore was cautious. Sammy was, after all, married. And he was still involved with singer-dancer Lola Falana.
When we met, it wasn't love at first sight. It was, I liked his mind, his brain, and his inclination of knowing, wanting to know a lot of things and knowing a lot of things, not having a formal education.
Just as Altar'Vis and Sammy were getting acquainted, Davis received dreadful news.
Okay, so at first I thought that he just had an eye for European women. Now I'm seeing that he has an eye for beautiful women.
On June 4th, Robert Kennedy was assassinated in Los Angeles.
Sadness and tragedy and complete sort of void and emptiness. I just hope that the assassinations that have been going on in America and that unwanted violence will not have, maybe my people will come to their senses and stop it.
He was devastated. Devastated, because he knew them.
Davis went into an emotional tailspin of alcohol, drugs, and overspending. He partied with rock stars like Jimi Hendrix and Mama Cass. Sammy even developed an interest in Satanism. In his memoirs, Davis explained he explored Satanism for sexual kicks.
He would go to these meetings, and he said to me, he said, these guys are trying to get laid.
One night, during the run of Golden Boy, a process server walked down the aisle and onto the stage. In front of a packed house, Sammy was served a summons to pay outstanding bills at several London stores. Gary Smith produced 7 TV specials starring Sammy.
Sammy was about making statements. Jewelry, clothing, acquisitions, about making statements that showed you, I have everything that I can want, because I never had it growing up.
Sammy, let's say hypothetically he made $8 million a year, he would spend 11.
All that turmoil wasn't helping Sammy's family life. Finally, in mid-1968, Mai made the painful decision to separate from Sammy.
She just said, I can't take this anymore. She said, and I never want to get to the point that I hate you. She said, because you're a nice person, but you're just pointed in the wrong direction. Now, by this time, I realize what's going on, and I'm caught up it's like that mouse that runs on that wheel, and I can't get off it.
Sammy was too much of an entertainer, and I was too much of a homemaker and a mother. And it's very difficult then to combine both of them.
That fall, the London run of Golden Boy wrapped. By then, Sammy's affair with Lola Falana was over, and the romance with Altar'Vis Gore was heating up. When Sammy and Altar'Vis returned to the United States, their relationship began to turn serious. In the meantime, Mai filed for divorce. The decree became final in December, just as Sammy turned 43.
A wonderful thing with the divorce was that we remained good friends, and that I am very appreciative about. We were good friends the rest of his life.
Some months later, during a rare week off from performing, Davis felt ill. A series of tests uncovered a diseased liver and potentially cancerous throat polyps. Davis was ordered to stop drinking and smoking, but Sammy ignored the advice. Friend, writer James Kotsyllabus Davis.
Sammy, I could never say was a big drinker. He just was a steady drinker. And it was understandable. The pressure of his life, of that travel, of performing, being up all the time in front of those footlights is, pressure indeed.
Despite the health scare, Davis continued his nonstop working and partying. Later that summer, the entertainer flew to London to start filming One More Time with fellow Rat Pack member Peter Lawford. Friends Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate threw a party in Sammy's honor. On August 9th, Sammy received horrific news about a mass murder in the Hollywood Hills.
The people who were killed by Charles Manson's gang were all the people that Sammy ran with. Tate had just left London, where Sammy was, and had gone to America, and then a few days later, the whole thing happened, and he read in the papers that she had been killed. And he said to me, he said, if I'd been back in Los Angeles, he said, I'd have been there, and he'd have been killed. I think God had his arms around Sammy a lot.
It's crazy how you can see things like that, the people that you hang with, the people that you be around, and something happens to one of them, you can see how it could have caused harm to you.
Coming up.
Well, I invited all of his ex-girlfriends to dinner, and I cooked.
At 43, Sammy Davis Jr. was a swinger who couldn't have his fill of chicks, money, cigarettes, and booze. The last thing the entertainer needed was a wife, but he was about to get one. At the end of 1969, Davis returned to the United States and to his life on the road. In May 1970, Davis was flying to a gig in Philadelphia when he proposed to his 26-year-old girlfriend, Altavis Gore.
It was raining that day, so he said he couldn't play golf, so that's why we got married. I'm laughing, but it's true.
Sammy installed his new wife in his luxurious Beverly Hills mansion.
It was an enormous house across from Pickfair in Beverly Hills, and Sammy was hardly there.
Why do you think it was so important for him to get another wife? I mean, let's be honest, Sammy Davis Jr. was playing the field. And honestly, after he got divorced, I felt like he deserved to play the field. So why was it so important for him to get hitched again?
There was a full staff, cooking every day to feed themselves. 2 huge refrigerators were filled with food that nobody ever ate, and it was very extravagant. Sammy worked to make money, and he didn't really know where it went.
One thing was certain, the money didn't go into a savings account.
He got her a Rolls Royce and put her name on the license plate. He wanted her to be well dressed. The clothes he bought for her were extraordinary. He'd go to Chanel and just wipe the place out. And, Chanel. I mean, right in Paris, and with fabulous fur-lined raincoats and things. Really, the extraordinary clothes of the world were put on her.
He wanted to make me Cinderella. He just wanted to make me happy, and I made him happy.
Sammy lavished money on Altavis, but not much time or attention. Theirs was an open marriage, at least on Sammy's part.
Sammy was very honest with her. He said, look, I'm going to be on the road. You're going to be in Hollywood, Beverly Hills. And, I'm not going to be alone when I'm on the road. And I'm not going to ask you to be any more alone than I will be.
Altavis took it in stride.
So I invited all of his ex-girlfriends to dinner. And I cooked.
Singer and friend Lorna Luft.
And she didn't tell him. And she had a lovely dinner. And they were all, and she just basically wanted to say, hi, I'm his wife, and I don't hate any of you. And it was and Sam walked into the house and almost had a heart attack.
She was adorable. I don't think she understood what she was getting herself into. I think she sincerely loved him.
Davis kept up a frenzied lifestyle on the road, and he didn't slow down at home.
He only needed about 20 minutes sleep a month, I think. And the parties lasted and went on and on and on. So it was the place to be.
On his bar, you'd have Chivas Regal, and you'd have all your good scotches and wines, and then he'd have a little jar.
The constant partying was not enough to distract Sammy from work. In February 1972, Davis recorded The Candyman, a song from the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Much to Davis's surprise, The Candyman became a #1 hit. Then fellow singer Tom Jones suggested that Sammy record the tune Mr. Bojangles. Davis resisted. The lyrics struck too close to home.
Sammy always hated the song because it really was talking about one of his greatest fears, of being broke, because he was always overextended in the millions. He just hated the fact that it was about a broken down singer.
But Davis knew a good melody when he heard it, and so did his listeners. Although Sammy's recording of Mr. Bojangles never charted, the song received massive airplay and became a favorite of his fans. At 46, Davis was suddenly hot once again. President Richard Nixon invited Sammy to join the National Advisory Council on Economic Opportunity. Davis agreed and promptly incurred the wrath of many Democratic friends.
The Kennedys wouldn't take his calls. People like Shirley MacLaine. Shirley MacLaine at least went to him and said, Sam, why are you doing this? Why are you with Nixon? And she said, I just wanted to hear it. But they all cut him off.
It's crazy how they would sit there and start with him because he was in an interracial marriage. But when he goes on with his life, all of a sudden, they get angry with him. They started this.
Sammy bridged all ethnic groups, and it was important to Nixon to appear to have a relationship with Sammy Davis, because here was Nixon, who was the ultimate square, being involved even on a social basis with the ultimate trendy, hip, cutting-edge cool, you know. Sammy defined cool before we had a word for it.
The Republicans at that point in time needed, or thought they needed, a, quote, black celebrity superstar. And the only reason I think that Sam got involved with them was because after Bobby Kennedy died, he carried this wound forever. And the Republicans were smart enough to ask him. The Democrats weren't asking him, because at that point, the Democrats thought he was Uncle Tom.
Davis was stung by the criticism. Nonetheless, the entertainer felt he could use his presidential connection for social good. Davis heard that African-American GIs in Vietnam were suffering harsher punishment than whites for minor drug infractions. In the spring of 1972, Davis brought the problem to Nixon's attention, and soon Sammy was heading to Vietnam.
He went to Vietnam as Richard Nixon's ambassador. He went to entertain the troops.
When Davis returned, Nixon invited him to a rally at the 1972 Republican National Convention in Miami. Friend Shirley Rhodes.
And when Richard Nixon came on the stage, he said that Sammy was a true American who could not be bought, that he was not for sale. And Sammy, being as emotional as he was, ran up behind him and grabbed him and hugged him. And that was all there was to it.
A photograph of Davis hugging Nixon went around the world.
And the magazines and the newspapers and the entire country was absolutely in an uproar.
Everyone had an opinion, mostly negative.
Tell me your opinion about this in the comments.
I can't speak for all the people of why they were upset. Maybe the blacks were upset because he hugged a white president that was Republican, and everybody at that time maybe were Democrats who were black. Some of his friends kind of reneged on him. Hurt his pride.
When I saw that photograph, I became wild. I literally did not speak to him for 9 months.
But Nixon did something for Davis the Democrats never did.
Nixon invited Sammy to the White House, and Sammy was the first black man to sleep in the Lincoln bedroom. And he slept real good.
By that time, Frank Sinatra was voting Republican. Sinatra was one of the few Davis cronies who was not bothered by Sammy's endorsement of Nixon. But Frank was disturbed by something else.
Frank eventually became very upset with Sam. One, his lifestyle. Two, the fact he was using a lot of stimulants. And Frank says, you are abusing a God-given talent that is indeed divine, and you have no right to do that. And so Frank really came down hard on Sammy.
Frank was particularly angry about Sammy's use of cocaine.
Frank was totally opposed to it, and when he heard about it, he said, I'm not speaking to him until he gives up that stuff. It's just not acceptable. Frank was very straight. He would have nothing to do with drugs.
Sinatra gave Davis the cold shoulder for 3 years. Finally, Altavis and Frank's wife Barbara arranged a private dinner at Caesar's Palace.
And as soon as they sat down, Frank said, come on, let's go talk. And they went over to another booth, and he said, look, he said, you're killing your friends. He said, you're doing something that's no good for you. You got all the talent in the world. Sammy couldn't believe what he was hearing, and he was in tears.
I think they were like brothers. It was a love-hate relationship, but they loved each other more than blood.
Frank said, look, we never lied to each other, ever. And Sammy said, no. He said, and I know if you tell me you're going to give it up, you're going to give it up. And he said, yeah, I'll give it up, Frank. And he did. That was the last of it from then on.
Frank should have made Sammy promise to give up booze. Sammy's alcohol intake was serious enough to put him in the hospital with an enlarged liver in late 1983.
If you're going to be Berezhnikov, you can't drink yourself till your liver is extended beyond your belt buckle. And And the doctor said, you take one more drink, you die.
I was frightened, you know, and I was told that I was this close to having cirrhosis.
57-year-old Sammy gave up the sauce for a while.
I used to worry because he was always sipping something, and he shouldn't have been. I never can say that I saw Sammy inebriated or drunk, but he always had that comfort glass by him.
I'd say to him, don't do this. You're killing us. Why? Don't do anything. Retire for a year. I can't retire for a year. You're crazy. Blah, blah, blah. The only thing that he knew how to do was perform.
But performing took its toll. In 1984, the 58-year-old entertainer underwent the first of 2 hip replacements. Remarkably, Davis recovered completely and returned to dancing.
I was around him during his hip operations, and it was another bump in the road to Sam. It wasn't a huge hill. It wasn't a, oh my God, you know, it was, I have to do this, I have to go into the hospital, I have to get this done.
Unfortunately, Sammy's financial health was not as easy to fix. Years of over-the-top spending were starting to catch up with Davis and his business partner, Cy Marsh.
Tell me something, why do you think it was so hard for him to give up the party life? You know, the drinking and the constant spending.
Finally, the IRS nailed Davis for 5 years' worth of back taxes.
Sammy did not pay attention to things that were unattractive to him or not appealing to him. If they weren't appealing to him and they didn't fit into his mindset at the moment, he just wouldn't deal with it.
And so began a battle with the government, a battle Sammy could not win.
See, Sammy had made such major income that they held on to him. They knew that they keep dragging money out of him all the time, that maybe they'll get back more than, you know, than he deducted as it's a disaster.
The money problems just made Davis work harder. In December 1987, 72-year-old Sinatra, 70-year-old Dean Martin, and 62-year-old Sammy announced a Rat Pack reunion titled the Together Again Tour. This time there would be no end.
Tell me something, who do you think, if someone was to start the Rat Pack again, who do you think would be the people that would be best befitting for that? Let me know in the comments.
NAACP jokes.
Now, Frank, Dean, they look at me as an adult, and certainly at the age of 63, I would hope that they would look at me that way.
When Martin dropped out at the last minute, Sinatra and Davis called on their old friend, Liza Minnelli.
It was just too much for Dean. Dean was always, in the later years, more fragile than Sammy or Frank.
Retitled The Ultimate Event, the tour played to sold-out audiences across the United States. But plans to continue in Mexico and Asia never came to pass. Coming up, Sammy's final curtain call.
Just before he died, he said, listen, I'm 64 years old. I lived the life of a man of 164.
In 1988, Sammy Davis Jr. made a spectacular comeback, performing with Frank Sinatra and Liza Minnelli to sold-out audiences across the country. But even Sammy couldn't cheat the Grim Reaper, and his time was running short. 62-year-old Davis rarely missed a performance, but in the summer of 1989, the entertainer canceled a show at Harrah's in Lake Tahoe.
I know that he was having problems with his throat pretty badly then, and his voice was starting to go.
The news was bad, very bad. Doctors diagnosed Sammy, who was a chronic smoker, with throat cancer.
When he was first made aware of it, he got all his roadies around him and he said, look, he said, I don't want any sad faces. I don't want any crying. He said, I have had a life that I never imagined I would have.
Doctors gave Davis 2 options. Surgery to remove his vocal cords would give him a 70% chance of beating the cancer. Radiation, a 20% chance. Davis chose radiation.
Help me understand something here, and I want you just for a second to imagine that you have that same option. Be honest. Let me know in the comments, which one would you choose?
They took his voice box out, he wouldn't be able to sing. And Sammy said, if I can't sing, I don't want to live. So they did radiation and it didn't work.
His illness wasn't the only issue on Sammy's mind. For a long time, Altar'vise had wanted a child. Sammy always resisted, feeling he was a poor father to the 3 children he already had. Finally, Davis agreed to adopt an 11-year-old boy named Manny.
I just know that Sammy did not want to have another child, but that he was very weak. By that time, he was near dying, and he didn't want to fight anymore. So he said, all right, fine, we'll adopt a child.
Davis underwent radiation treatments for 8 weeks. In the meantime, producer George Slaughter was preparing a television special honoring Sammy's 60 years in show business. In November, after finishing his treatments, Davis roused himself to participate in the program.
That day, Sammy was very, very ill, and I had brought his shoes there for him to tap dance. And I said, honey, I don't think you could dance. And he said, I can't talk, but my legs work.
And see, that's what I can't understand. Why not just go ahead and have the surgery and get the vocal box taken out? Because you could still make money performing by dancing. Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments.
The special aired on ABC in February 1990. Weeks later, Sammy was back in the hospital. Only those closest to Davis were allowed to see him.
Kim Novak, he always continued to love her, and in fact, as he was dying, she came to the hospital. She's one of the few people that were allowed to come to see him at the hospital.
But there was little doctors could do. Finally, they sent Sammy home, where devoted friends like Shirley Rhodes helped take care of him.
That house in Beverly Hills had a great meaning to him. You have to remember that when Sammy made it at Ciro's, he couldn't rent because of his color. So now here he is, the owner of 2 acres in Beverly Hills. Shirley would wheel him around and say to him, this is yours. Look at it. This is yours. You earned this. This is your house. This is your grounds. You own this.
And see, that's what pisses me off right there. He earned it. And he had the money long time ago. But on his deathbed, that's when he's able to enjoy it. And people get so fixated over skin color. Skin color. That's it. People need to change. Grow up.
Sammy's closest friends came to say goodbye.
He was in a hospital bed, and at that point he must have weighed 80 pounds. And there was this 12-year-old little black boy on white sheets, on his side, with tubes everywhere. And he still had his diamond bracelet on. And I went in, and he looked at me with his good eye. So I put my head on his pillow, and we talked. And he said, you know that I've loved you all my life. And I said, I know. And I loved you. He said, you've been a good sister.
And that's another thing right there that angers me. The woman that he forever loved, he still loved. And just because of skin color, he could not have the woman he wanted. You know, come to think of it, that's probably why all his other relationships didn't work, because none of those women were her.
And say nice things at the funeral.
On May 16, 1990, Sammy Davis Jr. passed away in the night. He was 64.
Wait a minute, hold on. The movie that I watched, that I remember Sammy Davis Jr. in, that I still watch to this day, is a Christmas movie called The Boy Who Loved Christmas. That came out in 1990. So you're trying to tell me why he was going through all of this hurt, all of this frustration, all of this breaking down of his body. He was in that movie performing, entertaining people. That's amazing.
2 days later, Sammy was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Glendale. A motorcade stopped traffic for 3 hours.
His funeral was a party, and that's the way he wanted it. It was a great day.
Sammy was not good because he was lucky. He worked at it. He meant to be good. He had the potential to be 5'3" and ordinary, even subordinary. He achieved the extraordinary.
I idolized Sammy Davis Jr. because 1956, black people were really struggling. And there were things as a young boy that I was told I shouldn't do, and I couldn't do, and I had to be careful, and I had to... But Sammy Davis did whatever he wanted to do. And he did it so great that it was all right. He couldn't be denied.
I wonder if it's possible to get a tour of his house. I would love to be able to tour his house, especially for my channel.
He opened the door for black entertainers and white entertainers. He also opened the door to freedom from racism. We know we still have some, but he made it better.
Frank Sinatra was one of those who was hit hardest by Sammy's death.
I think Sinatra was truly brokenhearted when Sammy died. I think by then they had become symbols to one another of what had been and all those glorious years that they had shared.
Unfortunately, Sammy died as he lived, in debt. Davis left substantial insurance policies for Altavis, his children, and his second wife, My Britt. But he also left a debt to the IRS of $5 million.
Just before he died, he said, listen, I'm 64 years old. I lived the life of a man of 164. And he said, the money that I owe them, if they want it, let them dig it out of the ground. That's where I'll be.
After his death, I mean, IRS came in and took his estate. They physically came in and took everything, from pictures on the wall to the refrigerator, whatever, couch, his personal belongings.
Eventually, the debt ballooned to $7.2 million. It was finally settled for $350,000 in 1997. Nothing can diminish the extraordinary legacy Sammy Davis Jr. left behind. He overcame obstacles that would have defeated a lesser man. The 5'3" dynamo made permanent changes in a world that did not always welcome him.
If it wasn't for Sam, we wouldn't have a lot of the entertainers that we have today. Because he was the first, he opened the door. And I think we should all say thank you to him.
You showed us that you can really just go through about anything in your personal life. Just about anything in your personal life. And if you really, really that good, you'll still be okay.
Just keep alive. You know, he's one of the heroes that we tell our children.
His contribution to the world. He gave, he did. He gave willingly. He gave openly. He helped with everything we did. Very busy. He was always there.
I think that Sammy would like to be remembered as the greatest entertainer that ever lived. And I don't blame him because he was
Many do remember Davis that way. In 2001, Sammy was awarded a posthumous Grammy, his first for Lifetime Achievement. Gary Smith is developing a TV miniseries about Sammy's life, and Quincy Jones is producing a Broadway musical based on Davis's memoirs.
There is nothing that can take away from the gifts that he was given. So that will sustain his memory for, forever. They're those incredible pieces of film that will always take us back to his childhood and carry us all the way through his life. And everything that he was is there. It's wonderful that we have those things as a legacy today.
When he passed, everybody said we're waiting for Sammy to get off the road. And in a way, I still think that he's on the road somewhere.
You know, I'm not trying to take anything away from the other women that married him, but I think hatred for his skin color did something that I didn't think no other person caught on to. And please correct me in the comments if you think I'm wrong. But I think hatred for his skin color, even though it didn't allow him to have the one woman he truly loved, and that broke him down so much so that all the other women can never hold a light to that one woman. And that's the reason why he either worked so much on the road and ignored the marriage, or diminished the bond that he had with those other women. Tell me your thoughts about that in the comments. I mean, what do you think? Maybe I'm on to something, maybe I'm not, I don't know. Be sure to like, share, watch more videos, and subscribe to the channel.